So my name is Tomáš Čejka, and I was developer at STRV. And at one of my previous projects, I get in touch with A/B testing, and then later I realized that A/B testing is typical buzzword, which everybody knows. Few people tried, and almost nobody use it on regular basis. So before I will try to share my experience about using A/B testing in project and how it helped us to succeed with the project. Let's go down to nitty-gritty of A/B testing itself by answering most typical questions. Oh, I can use this one. So let's ask all typical questions like what, why, when, who, how. So what are A/B tests? You can find many different definitions over the internet, especially at the Wikipedia, but this is my own, and I know that most of you are probably developers, but A/B testing is approach not for developers, but mostly for product and for business itself. Great. And it's a technique how to prove that your hypothesis about user behavior in your app. So what it actually means, it still sounds like an academical sentence, right? But this is typical simple example. You have some hypothesis that you can improve click rate. This is from some website by just changing UI of your Learn More button. And if you see, you can measure this metric, and after some time evaluate that the green button has a better success rate. So probably you will try to change this button for all subset of your users, not just for the filtered to test this green button one. So this is really most simplest example of A/B tests. Oh, why should we use A/B test? This is the great time to tell the whole story about the project. The project was called GIFnote, and I think that it is almost 6 years ago when one great man has an idea about mixing GIFs with popular sound clips. So mixing the music and video and images together and create fun content and share it over the network and social media. After 1 year of development, they have awesome code base, but over-featured product, and users were lost, and they were not able to use this app, and the user base was not growing at all, even they pushed so many money in the marketing. Fortunately, they raised some money again, and they started from scratch. They selected one most important feature from the app, and then they pushed the app to the, let's say, 2,000 of test users to evaluate that the concept is good and it's working, and also they collected some feedback. Then they realized that this type of user testing is really helpful, and we started to push every new feature just to different subset of our users. If you imagine it's American startup, so for example, and we are working with music, so one example is that, for example, West Coast likes different type of music than East Coast. So for example, New York is perfect for sharing content with rap music, but California is more common with electro music, let's say. And we started to play with different features, different content, different UI, UX in the app. And after another year, we were really successful. We have 4.8 rating in the App Store, more than 15K of reviews, and we are really successful. But to be honest, the whole end of the story is sad, because unfortunately Instagram came with this super cool feature, which was adding music to the Insta stories, which was actually the same, and we were not able to compete Instagram. So why should we use A/B test? Actually, it can save us time. At the beginning, the initial cost and time for the development is higher, but after some time it can pay off. It's much easier than, for example, pushing one feature, then realize that people don't like it and remove it and develop another one. With A/B test, you can push two features at one, let's say some lighter version, and later improve them to the full version. Also, so it saves your money, and also you can fail faster, which is another famous approach in startup world in the US. It actually means that you close your business sooner, so you're saving money for a future idea. Also, it can help you with product decisions, or especially with product growth, because A/B testing is especially useful when your type of app is public, so not in-house for, I don't know, your managers, and especially with when the app is about the content, so you are trying to selling content. So almost all type of e-commerce, you try to provide best content for your users upon their preferences. So who is involved in A/B testing in the whole process? It's not just about developer or some product management, product owners. This process is for whole team. It creates stronger references between product managers and developers themselves, because product managers usually just have an idea, but developers need to evaluate the costs. And designers are involved because the UX or UI in the app should be still constant and stable. Overall, that you are changing or providing different content for different people. When you should try to start using A/B test? You can start anytime, but you have to really evaluate or try to think if your tests are reasonable, else you are just like throwing away your money. And how to use them properly? In most cases, I've like get in touch with people. They just created one test, write some if-else statement, leave it there, without any like complex continue integration of this. But to do it properly, we set really like A/B test lifecycle. So at first, some product manager should collect some analysis data. Then together with developer, they should try to design A/B test, something which is really valuable and possible to do in quite a short time. Then of course you have to implement the A/B test. We will get to it later. But the A/B test shouldn't be presented for all of the time. It should be used and activated for limited time. Then you have to collect data and evaluate it. And at the end, never forget to remove your test, because all the code base will be crazy, like after few tests. Now let's go to real examples from my experience. So imagine that we want to try first A/B test. Usually I will present most of examples with a Mixpanel. I don't know if you know Mixpanel, but Mixpanel is a really popular analytics tool in the US. Alternatively, this is screen from Firebase. And to use the first test, you don't need to code. You can use it even as a product manager. You just define it on the screen and on the UI, and you can set it all in the web platform of Firebase or at Mixpanel. But when you're using Mixpanel, so the product manager is able to change the UI live in this web platform. But on the other hand, all more complicated tests, especially feature test or flow test, I will get into later, is necessary to define in code, and they are just able to turn it on and off. After you set the test and the variant, then you have to define your subset of users. So for example, you are able to set this, I don't know, red background color for West Coast, and for example, blue color for all ladies over 50 years. I don't know. So this is how you set the test in code. The flow is always the same. First, you need to define a test. So let's say that we decided to test next button background color. It's really good to write great comment, because you are not the one who will activate the test or who will input values if there is some open input, because those are the product people. After you define the test, you need to hook it up with your app IDE or SDK, whatever you call it. Those are those screens. Just to know, this tweak is just synonym for A/B test in Mixpanel, and tweak cluster type is just a wrapper for all basic types like strings, ints, enums, and so on. You are not able to define your own classes. And the usage in the app is super simple. You just assign the value from the prediction engine from the Mixpanel, and you can use it in your app. Nice. So now we have our first simple test. So let's go to the first type of test. I call it UI A/B test. When we will try to test UI, which should be super simple, but it can become a hell in a short time. This is those are three variants of the same screen. There is one local A/B test, which is about this complete and share button. This test is also not just about the color, but also about the type of the button. So we have one stick button or the floating button on the down. And unfortunately, there is also active test in the whole app. And the test says, if the user see the so-called artist attribution view, because this is the name of the artist and about the song as well, and this test runs in the whole app. So at all screens where is this preview, depends if the test is on or off, you can see or you can't see this panel. Now you see that the combinations just at one screen, there are about like 6 combinations which can happen. And moreover, the test about this button was so-called open, which means that you are able to input any color in the background. So it's not limited, it's nothing like enum, you can put there anything you want. So what to do with that and how to help yourself not to die managing so many if-else statements or like trying to solve constraints globally or whatever. Why? Right, so the tests are usually simple, but not in this case. But you can help yourself coupling views and really not to be lazy and subclassing your views in one class. This is just sample I wrote fastly, but you can see that it's a great idea to inject result of the test. So actually when initializing your view, you are able to inject value boolean if it's visible or not. And you can use it all over the app, so you are then not sad that in the one screen you are in conflict with another A/B test. We just change the button. This is really nice discussion question, which is better, like NIPS or writing UI in code. Nobody knows. And I'm quite a fan of NIPS or storyboard. But when I'm working with A/B test, believe me that code is winner in this game. And the fact is simple. Lazy variables are your friend. And when there are more UIs, especially those which are hidden for some subset of users, you don't want to initialize them all the time. And using lazy variables, you are able to initialize and use only those UI items you really need. Also, it's easier to test, for example, your code and your inputs and outputs. Well, another typical issue is that people use many constants and constraints in NIPS or in code without wrapping them in any sophisticated structures. So I would really appreciate if you use A/B test and you are playing with UI, please do it properly. Create your own structure defining all versions of UI And in this place, people are usually afraid of using stack views, I don't know why. But those are your friends because they are able to rearrange the whole screen or the whole view when you are hiding some sub-view items which you don't want to show to some user. Well, now let's go to more advanced type of tests. Those are called feature tests. And now we are not able to just change UI, but you want to present the whole feature. Again, similar screen. But if you can see, this is the tricky part, similar to Instagram. If you know it, you are just able to drag and drop you through the song and cut some clip from the song, edit to the video, share it, whatever. But at screen C, you can see that the same table view cell, which was reused in another target, which was just for iMessage extension, or especially keyboard extension, which has many limitations, such as using the memory. So you have more limits when implementing this feature, and you don't want to share it across all platforms or all targets and all code base. So how to solve this? First, apps extension is really limited, and don't try to put more advanced features like this, like cutting the song in many clips and syncing from time to time. For example, to keyboard app, it won't work. And you have to properly add classes, protocols or extensions, whatever you want, just to main app, and remove that from the targets of apps extensions. Also, I was trying to solve a question which approach is easier, like protocol-oriented programming with default implementations, to compose the feature like a puzzle, or if to use typical objective-oriented approach and subclass. And after some time, I realized that subclassing is easier to maintain the code, especially when there are new programmers on the project, because when they can get to extension method, they will try to use it all the time, and then they usually don't care about the business behind. Right, singletons and global objects. I know that it's trendy that singletons are bad, I don't know why, but if you imagine that this app was playing some sound and playing some video, so let's say this is some audio manager, is typical right usage of singleton. You don't want more instances, you want just one instance which take care about playing sound or playing audio from your app. But because you also need to seek from time to time, and this feature is not present in all versions in the app or not in all instances of the running app, it's a great time to think about wrapping up this audio manager in protocols and make more instances and create just some technique which handles that just one instance is present at a time, like some factory pattern or whatever. Pods. I don't know if you are working on a project which uses internal pods, but if you do so, never put your A/B test in pods or in any internal pod. Try to use it in the final app and final code base. Else you will overhead your costs many times by releasing and changing pods and try to share it everywhere. At last, after some time of running A/B test, we find out that some extended versions of our functionality in these features make our app in App Store crash. And then we realized that this, let's say, extended function, so it did the same like the base, so it did some magic with A/B tests inside, produced a different output, which was quite interesting, but adding feature actually let the output different, and it was unexpected in let's say next input or next validation, and there was fatal error which makes the app crash. And now the hardest version of A/B test, and those are flow A/B test. Imagine you have simple app with 3 screens and use, for example, simple architecture like MVC, and you are just passing some simple data like a user profile and user preferences from screen to screen. And then some product guy come and tell you, hey, is it possible to switch this from ABC to, for example, BCA? And maybe we can also test CAB. Well, it shouldn't be so hard, but then you realize that there are a lot of combinations of the screen. So for 3 screens we have just 6 combinations, but for 5 there are more than 100. Of course, not all of the combinations of screens are valid or you are interested in, but you need to help yourself to manage passing data and going from screen to screen. So as I said, yeah, passing data is another issue because then you try to duplicate it and to boilerplate. And you need to get out of this. Thanks to Mr. Kalu, who presented coordinators at NSP in 2016, we know that we can use enhanced version of architecture using coordinators. Those are objects which are managing switching from one screen to another. And also it's a great place to test input and output and passing data as well. Later, you can enhance your architecture with dependency injection, as I showed you, for example, with artist attribution view. So you are injecting all your assignments and evaluation from prediction engine. Also, it's a great idea to create a hybrid kind of model which wraps all data which are duplicated between different flows, let's say. And at least you should use some shared view model with shared logic and using the default implementation of protocols to compound it like a puzzle, like a real puzzle. So for example, in my case, it was one functionality was downloading the MP4 of video, another MP3 of the song, another functionality was to create and generate MP4 with a new audio layer, etc., etc. Now, when we think that we know everything about A/B test and all types and we are right to do anything, another issue comes. And it's a first screen test. Imagine that you wanna test onboarding. So every time new user install your app from the App Store, he will even see or not onboarding, and then you evaluate if people with onboarding use our app more or buy more products. But there is an issue. After your user base is growing, even you call something like this, so you are pretty sure that you set up your instance of A/B test engine, you flushed all your parameters, and you expect that here your user is in experiment and with all evaluated values of the A/B test, you are definitely wrong. Because issue is that he joined experiments, but the prediction engine, if you have, for example, 1 million users, is not able to return the values in such a short time, and you don't want to delay all users at the beginning when running your app. Actually, this was really a hard problem to solve, and at the end, we are also talking the mixed panel themselves how to do it and how to work smooth with this test at first screen, because they usually don't suggest to do that. And actually, we tried with, or we ended with our own solution. So actually we were tracking our own data in our analyze machine, and we try to create those tests by ourselves on device, just randomly for users, and we were not able to do really some more filtering of users. What are other A/B test issues, like common one? Open input. As I said, you as a developer just preparing the test for product managers. And if you realize that you, for example, create a test for a text for title, and you expect in designs that the title is no longer than, for example, 30 characters, and then your product manager come and write like a whole sentence, and it breaks your UI, you are the one who will be the bad one. So you have to really be in touch with those people who will use the test, really try to validate all invalid inputs because they will definitely use them wrong, and try to avoid this input data. Always try to create just different styles of the same and enumerate them. API. It actually means that for, as I said, the example with the songs or with different type of popular music at different parts of US, we had to call different APIs and different gateways. And we also cooperated with different music labels. And every music label, for example, Sony, has more limited accesses to the API. So, for example, for New York, we were able to just play, for example, 10,000 songs per day. But in California, for example, 100,000 or million. So there was another issue how to call different APIs from A/B tests. Actually, our clever backend guys created some proxy at the backend, so we were fine. Combination of data. As I said, we are not able to create A/B test for title and for background color as one test. So you need to create two tests and try to make combination of data as smooth as possible. Another issue is when you try to merging A/B tests from backend and A/B tests from, let's say, iOS app or whatever front-end client, because then you try to pair them. And actually you don't know the values, so you need to collect data twice and then use some magic in the mix panel or in Firebase to merge the data together. And last thing is testing. Actually the topic is called A/B test, but what you do is just you increase the complexity of code, nothing else. You test users, not your code. And now you need to test your code, which tests your users. It's not very easy way, because you need some default data for every type of the test. And we ended up with some example like this. So we created some wrapper which was able to use your default value you wanted to use, for example, for UI tests. But when it was in production, it definitely used the value from Mixpanel itself. Okay, let's do short wrap up, why to love or why to use A/B test. First, if you have public app which provide contents for users and you want to succeed, it could be your favorite tool, but it's not a silver bullet. It won't save your ass if you're not working with that properly. It definitely increased cost on development at the beginning, but it can pay off in the future. As a developer, you have to think a step ahead, because with every another test and combination of tests, it's really hard to maintain and later to remove, to be sure that you are not breaking anything else. And if you use your A/B test more often, it's good to change also your organization of the development. So if you use some Agile Scrum, always think to put the A/B test in game with every sprint. Thanks.
Are your unit tests A/B tests?
Oh, well, you don't use A/B tests in unit tests, and using unit tests for any part of code which use A/B test is quite hard. You need to hack it a bit by passing default values, for example, using like some command line. But overall, to be honest, we skipped writing tests for any part using A/B test because A/B tests are usually in game like for a week or two to collect the data. So investment in writing tests for this doesn't make sense at all. Yeah.
You said A/B tests are actually tests of users. Am I right?
Yeah.
So who do you A/B test? Users or some machine?
A/B test is actually user-based test. So you are really testing users.
Okay.
And the prediction machine only helps you to evaluate a value of the test for different user. So actually, if I will show you, I don't know, well, you shouldn't see it all, yeah? But let's say that there are a lot of like ladies here. So let's say that I will show you some picture, for example, picture of car, and I will ask guys or males if they like the car, and they compare it to, for example, ladies if they like the car. And after some time, I will know that for ladies, I will probably show different content than for the guys. So actually, you are really testing users to provide them best content or best features. And later, you can really run it like that. So you have the same app showing different content for different type of people, like typical by gender, typical by age, typical by location.
There aren't typical app tests like UI tests or machine tests, another yes?
No.
Okay.
And actually, you as a user, you don't know that you are part of the test. That's the trick.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, actually Facebook use it quite a lot. So whenever you are traveling abroad and you are showing your Facebook, for example, homepage to some local guy, the homepage should be different. He should probably see different, I don't know, boxes with advertisements and so on. But you don't know it. That's the trick. Okay.
Are there any tools that you could recommend to simplify, automate, or improve the process of A/B testing?
Oh well, to be honest, I have great product guys in the US who are really magicians using Mixpanel, and Mixpanel has some kind of this tool. I'm not pretty sure about Firebase. I would say that in our area, Firebase is more like known, but those time we used it, Firebase A/B tests were just in beta, so I'm not sure. I really don't know anything which could help you. Sorry.
It's super cool to hear from you that A/B testing is not only for product people but also for development teams. Yeah, even though it's more complex at the beginning, it could decrease the maintenance in the future. And yeah, my question is: have you ever run multiple A/B tests in the same time in parallel? And if so, do you have any tools to make sure that those A/B tests do not overlap with each other? So, for example, you have A/B tests on onboarding, and then somewhere in the app, and yeah, the results of A/B tests would be not very useful in this way.
Great question. There is not any tool for it. You can write some own manager which will try to handle it, but I don't think that it will be successful. And to be honest, this is the responsibility of whole product team to not run test which is in conflict with each other. So actually we try to plan the test for the future, And especially the screen I showed you with the UI test, even though this conflict was our mistake because we haven't realized that we are running the test with the artist attribution, which was global, and then we started to run the test with the share button at once. And even this was quite an issue, but fortunately the app was written quite good, so nothing happened. Maybe at iPhone X there was some UI tweak, I'm not sure. But this is responsibility of the product team to plan the A/B test properly and not to run some of them which are in conflict. And again, because the test is just for limited time, if you would invest in any tool to take care about handling conflicts, it probably won't pay off. Okay, that guy was first.
A/B tests are changing the behavior of the app. So is there any problem with the app store review guidelines, or does Apple doesn't care at all? Do you need to disclose it to Apple, or like it's not a problem at all?
Well, I think that potentially you are able to break any guidelines if you are pretty sure that the testers in Apple will run the version which is fine with the guidelines. On the other hand, this is not what you want to get. Yeah, you want to grow your business, grow your product, succeed. You don't want to just like get behind the Apple guidelines, because in next version they can run it with the wrong version or wrong evaluation of A/B test, and then they will just like stop releasing the app. It doesn't make sense to try it. But I think that you will succeed if you really want to break the rules. Oh, yeah.
There is one thing that is not clear to me. So whenever you want to deploy an A/B test, and do you need to release a new version of the application, or you can use a service in the middle? And if you are using a service in the middle, how does it impact performances on that?
You don't have to release the app. Actually, in your current release, the A/B test is present. Then you just use the third party, or probably the mixed panel, to activate the test, which means that for part of your user base, the app will look like different or behave different. And I don't think that there is issue with performance, only if you are, for example, more complex view, and you wouldn't take care about it, and you will really like initialize all the types of view at once or at the screen and just hide them, maybe then. But that's the reason why I was talking about the lazy variables, because by using that you are you should be sure that you are initializing just those UI items you are necessary for this type of test. So I don't think that, and the engine itself, the prediction engine, it really just slow down the first screen if you would wait until you have some results from A/B test. But else, once you run it, it's fine, like no issues. Okay, all clear? Then thanks guys.